Hi, Dr. Dave Webster. You're on my website, petscansontario.com. This is the home page, of course. And first and foremost, what you need to understand is that PET scanning is the world standard of diagnostic imaging in looking at and managing cancer patients by injecting trace amounts of radioactive glucose, mostly, which allows us to directly image the metabolism of cancer cells. There's lots of other uses of PET, which will be covered on my website. But it is, again, the world standard of care. It's been routinely available in Chile and Argentina for more than a decade. But Ontario, you need to know, has the most restricted access in the world. This is not by chance, but by design. And the government has used something called evidence-based medicine, which the world understands is a government policy tool, which allows them to have their experts design experiments that get the answers they need to implement the policies the government wants to implement. I know it sounds outrageous, but bear with me. So this message in particular is directed to the breast cancer patients of this province, and in particular the 300 women or so that were put through the government's PET breast trial experiment run by the PET Steering Committee. As you can see from the homepage from the government's PET Scans Ontario website themselves, is they're supposedly using evidence-based medicine to determine the most appropriate use of PET scanning. It's utter nonsense. The women who have breast cancer, and particularly who are part of that trial, I would strongly encourage you to go to the key player section, scroll down to the PET Steering Committee, go onto that page, and then look at the breast trial letter. I am going to be challenging the PET Steering Committee directly with a lot of questions that we have tried to present to them before, but they've absolutely stonewalled us and refused to answer them. The details are there, but in brief, it's this. The government deliberately designed a trial on you that was designed to fail. This is as unethical as it gets. They knew the answer to the experiment they performed on you before they did the very first patient. Why? Simply the PET scanner was not capable of detecting the cancers that they were supposedly looking for, and you no doubt would have been told what they were looking for, certain type of spread of cancer, in this case to the lymph nodes in your axilla. But again, the world already understood, and the camera simply was physically not capable of doing that. My colleagues got a copy of this first trial, which was, there was actually two versions. The first one, it was written in secret. We got a copy and we were horrified. It was clear this was unethical. It was designed to fail. It was only designed to make PET look bad. The trial was pulled. It was written over a period of rewritten again over a period, I guess, of about almost 2 years, I guess. I was reassured by the PET Steering Committee chair that, oh, we're working very hard on this. We take this very seriously, and so on. Yet when the new improved version was released, it was identical to the first version with such a trivial change that it was simply nonsensical and not worth mentioning. We actually brought that up, my colleagues and I, through the Ontario Association of Nuclear Medicine, eventually, because of this trial, held a press conference at Queen's Park and brought this to the press's attention. Of course, you don't hear much about it from the press, but then the press isn't there to really cover the news, are they? But the bottom line again is this. They put 300 women, or some 300 or so women, through a trial where they were exposed to radiation from a PET scan when the trial was absolutely and deliberately designed to fail and make PET look bad. Now, for the woman who took part of the trial, I don't want to scare you about the radiation. The amount of radiation exposure that you had was quite acceptable, as part of a routine diagnostic imaging test on patients, such as for CTs and PET scanning and so on. However, what is absolutely clear is that you do not expose patients unnecessarily to radiation, particularly if you're doing research. And there's absolutely no question that the majority of these patients were absolutely, in fact all of them, because they knew the answer before they started, that the PET scanner simply couldn't detect it. So these patients who were exposed, you were exposed to non-trivial amounts, what we call non-trivial amounts of radiation, for absolutely no good reason. So you need to decide whether you were part of a vital process of the Government of Ontario trying to determine the most appropriate uses for PET, or were you pawns in their game to block access to PET? So the second thing that they did, besides designing a trial which was deliberately designed to fail, was that then they deliberately excluded from the trial the very women with breast cancer that the entire rest of the world beyond the borders of the Ministry of Health hallways understood might have actually benefited from the PET scan. Isn't that, people with breast cancer need to think about that. You not only have the most restricted access in the world to PET scanning, but you have a government that designed a trial first and foremost to fail, and secondly excluded the very patients that could have benefited from a PET scan. So what happened was this galvanized, this trial simply finally galvanized the Canadian expert community in science and medicine with expertise in PET and so on, to finally do an extraordinarily unprecedented thing of passing 3 motions at a May 2005 national meeting where they declared these trials unethical. And they demanded they be halted and that a body of experts be brought in to determine how this possibly could have happened in Ontario. So I think you need to know that information. In fact, that trial eventually led to Dr. Al Dreger, who was one of the most senior members, or the most senior member of the PET Steering Committee, to finally resign in utter disgust from the PET Steering Committee and declare that what they were doing was bordering on immoral. I think you need to know this information. The press knows this. They won't. They don't, for some reason, don't think you should know this, but I think you do. I think you should know this. This trial, more than anything, demonstrates the length that this government is prepared to do through the Ministry of Health and their so-called expert advisory groups, such as Cancer Care Ontario, the PET Steering Committee, Ontario Clinical Oncology Group, the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Study or Services, called ISIS, and so on. These groups have all been involved with basically blocking access to PET using this so-called evidence-based medicine. So please explore those web pages, and if it makes you mad, do something about it. And if it makes other people mad who are hearing this video mad, then again, the website is there to give you the tools to, with all the contact information and form letters and places, to make some noise about this. We need to, because I assure you, PET scanning is not the only thing that is being blocked from access. Evidence-based medicine and various other techniques I'll talk, or methods the government is using to block access to healthcare, are well explained on my website. But know this, that Quebec covers PET scanning. They were forced to initially. They're very happy about it now. But why were they forced? They were sued by a colon cancer patient. So maybe that's what it's going to take to get the Ontario government's attention and their experts, who have steadfastly and uniformly refused to respond to the criticisms of their colleagues. This kind of style of operation, or how to respond to these questions, was started by no other than Mr. Smitherman himself, who set the modus operandum for how they were to respond, as you will see on my website. So please make use of the website, explore the options on there, send this out to everybody. We need to create a viral response to this, if at all possible, and challenge the government and challenge the government's experts to explain just why they did that experiment. There's other experiments they've done as well, as you'll see, but why did they put 300 women through a trial that was designed to fail, expose them to radiation unnecessarily, and excluded the women who would have benefited? It's frightening. You should be frightened, because this is healthcare, evidence-based medicine style in Ontario. Thanks.